I've always felt, and this is my position and a minority position and not an orthodox position, that salvation was an act of understanding. That it's all very well to feed the sick and bury the dead and all that stuff, but that ultimately somehow there was some kind of a heaven prepared for those who could treat this world as a conundrum, a puzzle, a paradox, and figure it out. And this is a persistent idea in folklore worldwide. You get it in Buddhism with the idea of the doctrine of the parinirvana, that if a single being could attain enlightenment, all sentient beings would be instantaneously enlightened. So somehow we're all waiting for just one of us to figure it out. Yes, the one monkey. Another example of where this happens on a folkloric rather than a world religious level is in people's encounters with fairies and elves. If you should for some reason get tangled up with fairies and elves, usually the only hope, the only way out, is an act of brilliant intellectual synthesis. What I mean by that is they pose riddles. And they want you to pose riddles. Well, if you're just, I think then you're in bad shape. You're never going to leave the hill. You're going to sleep beneath the hill for eons. But if you can riddle your way out, it amuses them to let you go. So it's sort of this idea. Great world religions present their own textual outpouring as a legitimate area in which to attain enlightenment. In other words, one can direct one's understanding toward understanding the properties of herbs, the movement of the stars, the way the weather works, or a book. Doesn't matter what book. The Quran, the Talmud, the Bible, the Mandukya Upanishad, the Anuttara Yoga Tantra, it doesn't matter. But somehow, and this is heuristics. This is the idea that textual analysis can lead to some kind of higher understanding. What is there more to say about that? Somehow, given the strong intuition that nature is organized fractally, and that man is somehow the microcosmic image of deity, then somehow our cognition, our thinking processes must surely be the most godlike thing that we do. And so doing them is a kind of practice, Maybe, we've talked about this in other evenings, that maybe finally what you're left with is the fairly grim conclusion that mathematics is the way. Because it does contain this, it is an infinite ascending staircase of ahas into higher and higher realms of unspeakable but very pleasing understanding. The strange thing about the spiritual quest, or the quest for understanding, whether it's spiritual or not, is that how endangered it is by answers. As I said, by closure. You ask a question, what is the world? Well, 50 different factions step forward with a revealed answer that they want to immediately sign you up for. So, and this sort of goes back to the tone of the first evening. The truth doesn't require your cooperation to exist, but illusion does. Illusion is in the eyes of the perceiver, and in fact the perceiver brings to the illusion its ontos, its power to be a thing. Truth isn't like that. So I think it's, people say, well, it's not reverent to beat on the tires and honk the horn and want to drive it around the block. I don't know, that's just a funny form of reverence to think. I mean, the mushroom said to me once when I in some epiphany, found myself on my knees, and it said, get up, stand up, don't meet this on your knees, meet it like an equal. What's the percentage of all this lollygagging? And of course, it has that kind of personality. I mean, it exalts, I was going to say freedom, but cognitive clarity. The Buddha image of all of this is Manjushri, the Buddha of discriminating wisdom. And Manjushri is always, not always, but in his peaceful form, always portrayed with a sword. And this sword is the sword of discriminating wisdom. It's used to cut through the scrambled illusions and delusions of the weary world to reach to the Bodhi mind. If you don't know where truth is, or if there is a bottom to the sea you're swimming in and all that, then I think that you feel an urgency about these questions. They have to be answered. You have to know. I don't know how many paths there are that bring you to this place, but certainly with psychedelics, you fairly quickly, that urgency leaves you, and you realize you now have the tools in hand to make the expedition you want to make. And now the question is to proceed judiciously in an ordered fashion, actually making sense out of what you perceive. The spiritual enterprise changes drastically once you have tools powerful enough to take you anywhere you want. So it's not about the search for power. You have the power. And then what you have to decide is, what are you going to do with it? Where do you want to go with it?